Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a large storm that's coming to the United States over the next 3 to 5 days. And this storm is going to bring a variety of problems, including the potential for severe weather. This includes damaging winds, large to very large hail, and perhaps a few tornadoes. We'll also be watching for this disturbance to bring a ton of cloud cover and rainfall, anywhere from the Great Plains back through the East Coast all the way through the early weekend. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's begin first with what's happening across the United States right now. And we will begin with the East Coast, and this is actually quite a large storm that's ongoing right now. This is not the one that we're going to be watching for severe weather as we go into tomorrow through Friday and Saturday, but this storm is bringing some impacts. We've actually had a little bit of isolated severe weather down in Florida, and even in South Carolina. There was a tornado warning earlier today in Florida, back down on the southern side of the state. But this low pressure system, for the most part, is beginning to shift offshore. We do still have plenty of cloud cover anywhere from the Ohio Valley back into the north and east. There's also plenty of rainfall associated with this, but the bulk of the severe weather or any storm activity is mostly offshore now. We do have a couple of storms still remaining near Miami, but it's really nothing to be too concerned about. This disturbance will continue to push to the east over the next 48 hours, and that'll eventually open the door for two different disturbances over the next couple of days. The first of which is actually back up in the northern plains, and this one's going to bring a little bit of snowfall to areas in the northern plains and very far northern parts of Minnesota, but overall this is likely to stay mostly in Canada. And our next disturbance will be coming out of the Pacific Ocean. You can actually see that low pressure system spinning offshore here, just to the west of California, and this low pressure system will move to the east over the Rocky Mountains into New Mexico over the next 24 hours, and it's eventually going to start to strengthen as it moves into the southern plains, and this will be leading to the next threat of severe weather once we go to tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. Also notice a ton of cloud cover streaming from the Pacific Ocean. We got plenty of moisture starting to pull into areas like the southern plains and central plains, and this will allow for that severe weather potential. And not just that, but we're also going to have a lot of rainfall and plenty of cloud cover all the way through the end of this week. Now let's talk more about what's going to be happening across the country over the next 7 days. We'll be breaking down that severe weather in depth for you in just a few minutes, but I want to talk more about the broad sense of things with all the different storms that we're going to be having, what kind of impacts they'll bring to certain regions. We'll be breaking that down for you all in the next couple of minutes. Beginning with tonight, we are going to continue to watch for plenty of rainfall across the East Coast. The majority of that will be moving offshore tonight. Notice that low pressure system in the northern plains. That'll continue to bring some snowfall. Many areas, though, across the central southern plains and the Midwest will remain for the most part dry tonight. There will be an increase of showers and storms overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. That'll stretch from Missouri and Kansas back down into Texas. And once we go into Thursday evening, that is when a more organized threat of severe weather will develop across areas from Texas back into southern Kansas, and this will start to materialize during the late evening and into the overnight hours. I'll have a more detailed breakdown on the severe weather threat day by day here in just a moment. And then once we go into Friday morning, this storm will actually split up into two different parts. The first of which will be in the Midwest, where we are going to have a lot of rainfall Friday morning. This will accumulate pretty quickly, but overall we're not talking about any severe weather or really any major flooding concerns here. It's mostly going to be rain. It's pretty ordinary stuff. Overall, I'm not too concerned about the Midwest with this particular storm. And we'll also be watching back down in the lower Mississippi Valley, Texas, and into the Dixie Alley Friday for the threat of severe weather. And this will really go through the morning and afternoon hours. This will cause the potential for some numerous damaging winds, a little bit of large hail, and also maybe even a few tornadoes. Once we go into late Friday night, there will be a brief passing area of snow across areas in the upper Michigan Peninsula and as well as central Wisconsin. So keep that in mind. Once we go into Saturday morning, this storm continues to roll to the east. More severe weather will be possible down in areas like Florida, even into South Carolina by Saturday morning. And then once we go into late Saturday into Sunday, we'll now need to watch for the northeast for some snow. I mean, it's a crazy storm overall. We're gonna have a lot of different aspects to this, but just kind of notice the evolution Friday, Saturday into Sunday. The low pressure system will actually strengthen as we go into late Saturday night into Sunday, and that'll lead to some heavier snowfall in parts of northern New England, which will break down for you as well in another forecast. But that's definitely gonna be something to watch for as well. And by early next week, things are going to dry out for much of the country. There might be a few more storms by the tail end of next week, but if there will be any severe weather, snow, etc., those things all remain very unknown at this time. All right, let's break down more in detail what the severe weather looks like for the next few days. And we're going to begin with tomorrow, which is tossing trampolines on tall trees Thursday. We do currently have a slight risk of severe weather. This goes from Wichita, Kansas, all the way back into central Texas. There's there's also a marginal threat of severe weather that goes just south of Kansas City all the way back into southern Texas. The main concern for tomorrow, which this will primarily be during the evening and overnight hours, but the main concern will be large hail. There is a 15% probability within a 25-mile radius of large hail, so definitely make sure you're protecting your vehicles and protecting any plants that you have outside, because those could get damaged from large hailstones. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if we did have a small hatched area for hail, meaning that there might be some 2-inch diameter hail or greater. It's entirely possible, but it depends a lot on what happens tomorrow morning with the convection, and I'll be breaking that down for you here in just a second. Tornado risk actually does exist tomorrow with this setup, even though it's not really a big threat by any means. There will be the chance for maybe an isolated tornado across areas from western Oklahoma back into central Texas, but the threat does not extend into the Oklahoma City metro or in North Texas at this time. It's primarily back over in central Texas and again into western Oklahoma, where there might be an isolated tornado. And going into Friday, I do think the threat of severe weather will increase across areas from Texas back into Florida. We do have a slight risk of severe weather, which does include areas again from Florida back into East Texas. You might be wondering, what are you talking about? It's the same risk as what we're talking about on Thursday. Well, the Storm Prediction Center has already mentioned this, and I honestly think we're probably going to see an upgrade to an enhanced risk of severe weather, but the Storm Prediction Center has mentioned that there is still some confidence issues with the forecast on Friday, but once confidence grows a little bit, it's entirely possible that we do have an enhanced risk of severe weather. The main concern will be damaging winds, large hail, and as well as tornadoes. There will be a chance for a few tornadoes anywhere from East Texas all the way back into Florida, so it's a good time to remind yourself where your tornado action plan is, where you want to go, and also make sure you have multiple ways to receive warnings in case there are any tornadoes on Friday, which I do presume that there will at least be a couple. All right, timing for tomorrow, storms will be ongoing across areas in Texas back into northeast Oklahoma, and this is around 8 in the morning. We're not going to be talking about really any severe weather for the most part tomorrow morning, but what this is going to do is allow for a lot more rain to fall, and this will essentially stabilize the atmosphere for most of Texas and even back into eastern Oklahoma. But once those showers and storms push to the east, that will start to unstable the atmosphere, essentially making it so that we can have some thunderstorms develop during the late afternoon and evening. And right around 6 to 7 o'clock, the first area that we'll have to watch for is going to be in southern Kansas and northwest Oklahoma. Those will be primarily comprised of hail. Once we get closer to around 8, 9 o'clock, there might be an isolated supercell that tries to develop back over in central Texas, perhaps near Brownwood, but uncertainty definitely remains there since a lot of rain will continue all the way through about 10 o'clock tomorrow evening, which will literally stabilize the atmosphere for a long time. And what that'll end up doing is pushing off any storm development across Texas until after midnight tomorrow. So storms will fire up around 2 to 3 in the morning and eventually move to the east, producing primarily damaging winds and large hail. But that's really what we're going to be talking about, is a very late evening threat into the overnight hours, and eventually going into Friday morning, these storms will still be ongoing across Oklahoma and Texas. And the HRR model has storms moving into areas like Louisiana and Mississippi as we go around 12 o'clock on Friday. And what we'll have to watch for with these is the potential for a couple of tornadoes across areas in East Texas and back into Louisiana. Any storms that are going south to north out of basically the Gulf of Mexico, those are going to be the ones to watch for the greatest potential of a tornado risk. So we'll have to watch that very closely. And once we go later into Friday, a bit more of a broad timeline. This is what we're talking about at lunchtime. So showers and storms from Louisiana back into Mississippi. By around 6 o'clock, storms will be moving into Alabama, the Florida Panhandle, and back into southern Mississippi. Eventually by midnight, storms continuing to shift to the east across areas like Georgia and even Florida. And there is a slight risk of severe weather Saturday across areas in South Carolina, Florida, southern Georgia, and southeast Alabama. And the main concern right now is going to be damaging winds. And by around 3 o'clock in the afternoon Saturday, those storms are still ongoing. The primary concern will be damaging winds, and eventually going into Sunday morning, all of that activity will shift offshore. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.